are in a position where they would never go to law enforcement even if their spouse were killed, because they're concerned that if they are found out, they'll just be sent back. And that means they're not in the system, they're not recorded.
These guys are gang members? Like, these guys are tied into this criminal organization that doesn't look like it.
People who are coming almost exclusively for economic reasons. They'd cross the border illegally in order to find a job. Where if they turn themselves over to law enforcement, they get a court date.
So which one do you want to start with, security or?
Well, let's deal with security. Okay. I'd say the biggest problem we have had with immigration enforcement to this point in the United States is we really disincentivize the people coming north to cooperate with the system. And that means they're not in the system, they're not recorded. And so there's always been this vested interest until recently in trying to evade border patrol and law enforcement, which means when they do get north of the border and they do get established in an urban center, they're basically in the underbelly of society. They're in the cash economy, and that makes them very likely to get robbed, and it makes them very likely to reach out to law enforcement if they're a victim. And you could argue that probably half of America's irregular migration population, which based on whose numbers you're using is somewhere between 5 and 8 million people, the half is 5 and 8, are in a position where they would never go to law enforcement even if their spouse were killed, because they're concerned that if they are found out, they'll just be sent back. That makes them fantastic recruitment targets for organized crime of all flavors. And since the most powerful organized crime groups in the United States today are Hispanic gangs, that's a security problem that we have created that we didn't need to.
I'm going to stop you right there real quick, because I'm going to jump in that same moment. You have TDA right now in America, right? The Tren de Agua, who's blowing up. But just today, there was a report of 4 of them who have been arrested here in Dallas for kind of a home invasion. But I looked at the photos of all 4 of them, and one of them I was like, yeah, I could probably say that guy. But the other 3 look like these guys are gang members. Like, these guys are tied into this criminal organization that doesn't look like it. And it feels like it falls in line with what you're saying, is they probably were kind of scooped into the mess of it. But
I don't know the specifics of that case, but when you've got a population that's working for cash that can't turn to law enforcement at all, it's very easy to recruit them or at least intimidate and exploit them.
Yeah, crazy. And so that's something that we have to pay attention to in America right now because of that.
Right. Now, this is the people who have been here for a few years. So under late Obama, early Trump, kind of in there, we had a change in the type of migrant that was coming in. It used to be people who were coming almost exclusively for economic reasons. They'd cross the border illegally in order to find a job. What's happened more recently is they found that asylum loophole, where if they turn themselves over to law enforcement, they get a court date and then they're released. And so they're kind of half in the system. And now we've got this very squishy recent migrant population that has like one toe in the system and one toe out of the system. And it's just this wild kaleidoscope of possibilities, and it's really hard to categorize any of it. And so anyone who wants to pick a fight with anyone else politically on immigration, it's easy to find a case study because there are no neat buckets anymore. And in a political election year, it makes it very, very, very simple to blow every little thing out of proportion. If you're looking for what we need, the term is immigration reform. We haven't had it since the 80s. And the last 3 attempts, we've had a presidential candidate shoot it down because they didn't want to give the person who was in the White House the victory. So we've definitely put partisan politics above fixing this problem. But the idea that a system that was designed by Reagan is still working well, no.
Yeah. It's fascinating that you say all that. You're 100% right.
And it happens on both sides. I mean, Trump is the one who did it most recently, but Biden did it too.
Yeah, and this crazy loophole of an asylum situation has been wild to watch. And the numbers of any of them ever showing up for that court date, it's been somewhere down to the 3% range of how many people
there's no incentive, and
right.
It's like, especially if you then go to live with somebody who crossed in the old system who might be illegal. A lot of these, after a fashion, are some degree of family reunification migrations.
Absolutely. And there's also other loopholes blended into that. So if they marry an American citizen, if they have a child here in America, it becomes, and so all the other
that second one doesn't work anymore.
Doesn't work anymore.
It's like until we reform DACA, another immigration reform issue that's in the wind.
Right.
Yeah.
So it's
something that Carter did in the 70s, and he's a one-term president who it's been a while, so everyone's kind of like whatever. There were a couple of hurricanes that were hitting Central America like back to back, and so 500,000 people lost their homes. There wasn't food to eat. The farms had been flattened. These are countries that are on the edge anyway, and so they started walking north because they had nothing left. And Carter had the Department of Immigration go down, intercept them in the pass, and just hand out worker permits to everybody. And so basically, you when you get to the States, you contact the person on the card, you pay your taxes, you keep your nose clean, and if at the end of 3 years, you then are presented with a choice. We can fly you home free of charge, you can start the path to citizenship, or you can buy a 1-year extension, renewable, to your worker permit. And so everyone was in the system. Everyone cooperated with law enforcement, and at the end of the day, we got 500,000 citizens out of it.
It's
difficult to imagine us doing that today.
Yeah,
it's too logical.